happened since the first race of the season back in Bahrain on the 5th of March. Max Verstappen and Red Bull have been in a league of their own. We've welcomed Vegas to the F1 lineup, and this weekend the sun sets on the 2023 season. I'm Denny Gow, and this is 5 Live Formula One. As is now customary, Yas Marina hosts the final race of the season, and Harry Benjamin is not iconic, but it's predictable. And after Vegas, well, take predictable.
Yeah, I suppose we will. It's we've become accustomed to it over the years, hosting the F1 finale, Abu Dhabi. I was always a bit sentimental. I used to like Brazil being the final round. I know there has been a little bit of favouring for that to return, but Abu Dhabi has become the one to go to the end of the year. And it's an intriguing one as well, because really only FP2 quali is representative for the actual sessions we'll get for the race. FP1 and FP3 are in the daytime, and of course this is a twilight race. So the original twilight race back in 2009, this first came on. We've got the cool pit lane exit as well, which is super unique under the tunnel. They feed out through turns 2 and 3, and then of course it was redesigned a couple of years ago for the 2021 race, and we all remember how that one went down. But redesigned, took a few chicanes out, winded it in parts to try and increase overtaking, and last year we got more overtakes than usual in Abu Dhabi, so hopefully that trend continues. But although 1, 2 and 3 is all settled, there's still stuff to play for in Yas Marina this weekend.
Don't give it away too quickly. We'll come back to that. Alice Powell is also alongside me, W Series race winner. Alice, do you like this track?
I do, actually. Since I prefer it more now they've had the changes. Obviously, we had a chicane on the way down to turn 5, and we also had a chicane and then a sort of double left, essentially, you could say, that is made up of just turn 9 now. I think it's got a mixture of corners, and it does produce overtaking opportunities. Obviously got the very long run down the straight from turn 5 to turn 6, aided with DRS, of course. You've got the opportunity out of 7, again, DRS aided, down into turn 9. You can put people quite under pressure through that tricky final sector between, we could go, let's say, between turn 11 all the way through to 16. So there's a mixture of corners here. It's a tricky circuit, especially that final sector. So I quite like it as a track. There's certainly a lot worse tracks out there, that's for sure. So no, I think it's always a nice circuit to come to at the end of a season.
It's always spectacular, isn't it? No matter what you think about the track action off track, you've got boats bobbing around in the harbour, thousands of millions of pounds being floated around as well. If you look at all the structures there.
Ferrari World next door.
Ferrari World, exactly. Have you been on that roller coaster ever?
No, I've not, but apparently it's one of the fastest in the world.
Yeah.
I'd like to go on it.
Would you?
Yeah, I would.
Sign me off. I do not want to go on
that.
Let's go. But yeah, as the lights go down, all the bulbs come up, and there's so many bulbs scattered around this track just to make it enjoyable, a thriller. And, it just has a feeling about it when the lights go down of being dramatic. And obviously, if we think back to 2021, where it was Hamilton versus Verstappen, as if I need to remind you, that was about as dramatic as it could possibly get, Harry.
Absolutely. And, we've discussed and dissected what happened in 2021 enough times, so I'm not going to bring that back up. But
really? You don't want to go there?
No, I really don't want to go there.
Please explain, I've forgotten.
So basically what happened was, no. But I mean, we've seen title showdowns in Abu Dhabi before. I mean, go back to 2010, and famously Fernando Alonso just couldn't get past the Renault of Vitaly Petrov at all.
He remembers Vitaly Petrov.
I know, can you believe it? Good old Petrov. And he couldn't get past that Renault. It was the old layout of the track back then, and that gave a title to Sebastian Vettel. And it's been the scene of many a historic race and some good overtaking manoeuvres as well. There is chance of safety cars, about 60% chance of safety car. And I think generally when when any race is kind of put under the lights, it makes it look a little bit better. So I quite like a night race, and particularly this one because you get the sunset at the start of the race as well. So you really get that change in lighting and visibility as well, which is fantastic. But over the years, I've really learned to love Abu Dhabi actually, and I quite like it now as the finale for F1.
I wonder, as the sun sets, if we'll get any mechanics or engineers just nodding off a little bit, because the trip from Vegas last weekend to Abu Dhabi was, it was long. Alice, you went all through it. You're just about standing. It was brutal, wasn't it, as far as F1 races go?
Yes, I have to say it's probably one of the most brutal race weekends I think I've ever done in
just
in terms
weekends.
of that. Weekends, yeah. Even I've done a 24-hour race before, and I have to say I don't think that was as brutal as Vegas. For example, especially with what happened with free practice, that then delayed everyone getting to sleep. But majority of the time, us all the mechanics, the teams, were getting to bed anywhere between sort of 5 a.m. to 7, 8 a.m. Vegas time. Bearing in mind, Vegas is 8 hours behind UK time. So, you work that out. You're going to bed in the afternoon. And because, you're there working for Formula One, and quite a lot of people are there staying in the hotels on holiday, on a jolly, going to the casinos. They're up and about, at 11 a.m. or 10 a.m. So, yeah, a lot of people found it extremely tiring, and you couldn't. There's no way that when the 4 or 5 days that you were there to adjust to the time zone. So it was hard, for all of the teams and everyone involved in working at that Grand Prix. And it's safe to say that when people came away from that race weekend, there wasn't a single person that I know that worked there that wasn't tired. They were all... And actually, the best sleep I got was on the plane on the way back.
Oh, delightful. Extra
7 hours.
Extra leg room?
I did. I booked my seat
Lucky for some.
Early on, because I'm at a certain status.
All right. Oh, someone's got their gold card.
Economy seat with a little bit of extra leg room.
Oh, well, Alice Power living the high life. But you make it's a really important point, actually. If the drivers are tired, then just imagine how the mechanics, the engineers, the catering staff, security, media, they don't get the glitz and glam that the drivers do by being shuffled everywhere and having the best of the best. So if the drivers are feeling it, then it's going to be almost double that compared to everybody else. And the issue for next year is this Vegas is going to be the beginning of a brutal triple header to end the year.
But talking about the mechanics, Harry, after the Grand Prix finish, they can't go, right, we're done, we'll roll the car back into the containers. They're instantly taking down the garages. They're instantly packing up everything that goes into the freight. For probably a lot of that freight would have gone back to base, because they have 2 or 3 different freights. It's brutal, and I know a couple of mechanics that actually were clocking off, finishing at 7, 8 a.m. and some of them said it's hard to, even though you're knackered, it's hard to switch yourself off and wind down, and then a lot of them had sort of flights in 8, 9, 10 hours time. Some of them actually, I know, went straight from the track at 5 a.m. to the airport to get on a flight to head all the way to Abu Dhabi.
And it's had knock-on effects, as you say, for the drivers. There was no Esteban Ocon in the first practice session. Admittedly, there were a lot of rookies in the first practice session, but he was off yesterday as well because of feeling ill. And that's the impact it had on some of the drivers, let alone mechanics and engineers. Right, let's take a look at this season. As we said, this is the last race. So I want to find out if you think it's been historic, because Max Verstappen has been unbelievably good, or just a bit dull, Harry?
I think it has been historic, because we've not seen this kind of dominance before. Yes, we've had dominance, Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, and even before, with the likes of Senna or Prost. At one time, there's always been a dominant driver and a dominant team, but this is on another level. 18 wins, 11 pole positions, 10 of those wins consecutively. And that's before we've even got to the final race. He has over double the points of his teammate, Sergio Perez, who is in second in the driver standings. Max Verstappen and that Red Bull car will go down in history as one of the best cars to be ever produced in Formula One. And Max Verstappen will go down in history as one of the best drivers in Formula One. And there's always that argument, isn't there, between how much is it driver and how much is it the car. And there's a great episode on the Chequered Flag podcast, Andrew Benson sitting down with Adrian Newey, and they discuss that very scenario. And it's very hard to actually pinpoint an answer for that. But I think you look at races like we saw in Vegas last time out, where Verstappen is almost actually having to fight and get his elbows down. At one point, the strategy is put him on the back foot. He's still able to come through, and that's where his talent just gets him through and elevates him above that car. And historical, absolutely 100%. Dull, yes, that is the knock-on effect. But if you look down from Verstappen, the rest of the field has actually been incredibly tight. We had some of the smallest margins in qualifying throughout the year compared to the other drivers in the field, and that's been incredibly exciting to witness. It's just a shame that gap from second to upwards has been so big.
I think you can't say that it's not been a historic because of Max being so dominant and breaking all these records. 18 wins this season. I think that's 5 more than any other driver has managed in any season of Formula One, and that's historic, isn't it? You know, and okay, the racing has been, because Max has been so dominant, the racing hasn't been fantastic. We want to see people bat it. We want a season like, okay, without the controversy or whatever, like 2021, where it's going down to the wire. You know, we were spoiled in 2021 with all the, going down the champion, not knowing who was going to win going into the final race. So in that sense, it's not been a great season, but in terms of records and just the sheer incredible engineering and driver skills that we've seen from Red Bull and from Max Verstappen, anyone like myself who appreciates the skill that goes into making a fast Formula One car and that goes into driving a car as fast as physically possible round a track, it's impressive.
Well, Harry gave a little bit of it away. We're going to sit down with Adrian Newey. He was speaking to Andrew Benson about this year's car at Red Bull and what makes him tick. It's a fascinating listen, and we'll play a little bit in a while. But before that, let's hear from Max Verstappen. As you say, another record is in the offing this weekend. Win number 54, which would surpass that of Sebastian Vettel. Here's the Dutchman talking about the potential of win 54.
Of course, it's quite a crazy number. But yeah, we've of course also, we had a crazy year. So it would of course be very nice. But at the same time also, I'm very focused on what's ahead of me, and hopefully also next year, we have a competitive car again. We can really, continue that momentum that we can win more races.
When you look back at 2023, can you choose a highlight in this impossibly brilliant season you've had?
Yeah, well, I think winning my the comeback race in Miami, I think was great. I think that was an important one. Winning at home in Zandvoort was a very nice one, and I think winning in Suzuka after the tough weekend we had in Singapore.
We've just heard from Charles how Ferrari hope to come back next year with a car that can challenge you guys. How big a jump do you think Red Bull need to take over the winter to maintain your advantage?
It's difficult to tell, but of course we are also working on our car to try and make it better. I think we know our weaknesses as well in the car, and that's what we'll of course try to work on. Plus, of course, trying to make our strengths, of course, even stronger.
Go on, share something with us. What are are there any weaknesses in the
of course there are. I mean, look at our race weekend in Singapore. So in general, on street circuits, I think we are a bit, struggling a bit more, like in Vegas also. So yeah, low speed is definitely not our strongest point in the car. Bumps, curbs as well. So that's definitely a big area where we can improve.
So that's Max Verstappen speaking with Tom Clarkson there. Win number 19, it's a done deal, isn't it?
You'd think so. I think for this weekend at least, it's Red Bull, probably McLaren, but we still wait to see how what the competitive order might be in practice. But yeah, it is a done deal. I mean, I read a stat. And stats are stats, aren't they? So, take them as you want. But I saw he's scored more wins since the start of the season, or of last season, than Alonso has in the last 20, his last 10 seasons, really, because he had a gap. And that's 33 versus 32 wins compared. And you look at Verstappen on the win list, already looking to take 54, and Hamilton, when he was on going for win 54, he was in his mid-30s in terms of age, and Verstappen is 26 years old, and I think we can say that's still pretty young for a driver. I know the driving age is, as an average, is getting younger and younger, but to have achieved all that and to have taken on that kind of maturity level as well, just underlines what a stellar drive he is.
I hate having to ask you, Alice, but do you see anything changing for next year, or are we just going to have another 20 wins next year? Who knows?
Awkward silence coming on. I can't see it changing. I think Red Bull are just seeming to be too strong at the moment. And I would love to sit here and say, look, we're going to have Hamilton. I'd like to say Hamilton, Alonso, Verstappen. Imagine that, having those three fighting for the title at this time next year. I expect Mercedes to be better next year.
I love the way you say that, better?
Yeah,
with
better,
a hopeful question mark.
But in terms of, sitting here and saying, yeah, I think Mercedes or Lewis or George have got a shot for the title, or Leclerc or Sainz. No, I think Max, unless Perez switches it on, then maybe we could have a two-way battle for the title between the Red Bull drivers. But do you know what? Even though it has been one of those seasons where Max, we have had some good races. Zandvoort, that was a great race. Okay, the weather that was chucked in there. Vegas was good. Singapore was good. Of course, we want to have 24 good races, but who knows? It could throw up. Do you know what? It could throw up some surprises. If you look at the start of the season, for example, you wouldn't expect McLaren to be where they are now, sort of, with Lando. So who knows? So I am going to leave that answer there with some kind of hope. I don't want to be too negative.
I like that. We have an amazing exclusive as Andrew Benson sits down with Adrian Newey. You can hear that right after this. Well, we talk about Red Bull, and you can't think about that car without thinking about Adrian Newey. He is the mastermind, the greatest designer maybe in F1 history. He sat down with BBC Sports chief F1 writer Andrew Benson for an in-depth, exclusive chat.
Just talking about you and design for a minute, is it true that you can see the airflow?
No, of course not.
Can you imagine the airflow?
I can picture it, and I think that's perhaps one thing which I seem to be. If I try to be objective, I think that's perhaps one of my strengths, is that I can actually picture things quite well in my mind's eye.
It's hard for you to know because you can't see inside other people's brains, but do you recognise that as a rare quality? You've worked with a lot of engineers over time.
It's certainly not unique, of course. We've got several great engineers now who can also do that. But I think for me it's perhaps as a result of having relatively lonely long summer holidays, or school holidays I should say. Then I used to kind of ultimately start sketching out when I was 11 or so, sketching out designs of racing cars and then making models by folding up bits of aluminium and making bits of fiberglass and so forth. And whilst of course I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, what I was unwittingly doing was practicing that from quite a young age.
Yeah. How do you reflect on this incredible year at Red Bull?
With a bit of surprise, I suppose, to be perfectly honest. Obviously this year's car is an evolution of last year's, which first half of last season, obviously in a tight battle with Ferrari. We started to edge away a bit in the second half of the season. But we fully expected this year that everything would close up. Second year into a pretty stable set of regulations. So to have the advantage we've had this year was totally unexpected.
How would you define Max's qualities, and how do you see him in comparison to the other two greats of this era, or the last decade or so, like Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso?
I think what I can say I've been fortunate enough to have worked with several great drivers, and whilst their personalities can be significantly different in how they conduct themselves, how their approach to little things like debriefs after each session, whatever, then they all conduct themselves very differently. I think the thing they all have in common is the ability to drive the car with a lot of mental reserve left. So if you take Max and others I've been lucky enough to work with as well, where they're able to drive the car with enough capacity left over to think about how they're using the tyres, how the race is unfolding, when to push, when to not push. More, of course, now in particular with these cars, how to adjust the electronic settings to suit the handling of the car as it develops through the race. And that Max is quite exceptional at.
If you want to hear the full interview, which goes on and is more fascinating if that's possible, then you can log on to the BBC Sounds website or app, and you can also read Andrew's article. He's been a busy boy, because not only has he done that interview, he also sat down with the Ferrari chairman, John Elkann, and he doesn't speak to many people very often. Well, certainly not in the media, so it's a real treat. So lots of things online, BBC Sports website there. But I
Smashing out
found
the exclusives is Benson.
I know.
Smashing.
He's on one, isn't he?
Almost as good as Adrian Newey. I mean, I found listening to him amazing when he talks about the fact that he can see and feel the flow of a car, and he goes on to talk about who he would have liked to have worked with in the paddock. It's just fascinating.
And he's just so calm, isn't he? I mean, he's just so calm how he explains everything. And I'm like you, Jenny, I could sit there and just listen to Adrian talk about the car and the design and the engineering, even though it's way above my head. I'm not particularly clever with that kind of stuff, but just listening to his brilliance. And you have to take your hat off to him, because what he has produced at Red Bull, and it's amazing that he sits there and says, we didn't expect to be this fast this season. I'm like, come on, really?
Playing it down. Well, unlike you, Alice, I'm on Adrian Newey's level. I completely understand what he's talking about at all times, and I also can see airflow as well. But there's a lot of chat, right? Who's the GOAT, the greatest of all time in Formula One? Hamilton, Verstappen? Do you go Schumacher? Do you go Senna? Where do you go? It's Adrian Newey. He's it's 12 constructors championships with Williams, McLaren and Red Bull, and out of those 13 drivers champions, working with some of the likes of Mansell, Prost, Hill, Villeneuve, the list goes on, and most recently of course Max Verstappen. He is the greatest of all time. He is Formula One's best product.
I think if you're talking modern days, I think there have been other people who... This is a whole different argument and another podcast.
What do you class as modern?
A long time.
I'm thinking back to Colin Chapman. I'm thinking Frank Williams. I'm thinking of all the people who have made F1 what it is, and certainly Newey is one of those.
Those two people that are funny, that great minds think alike, Jenny, were the ones that sprung into my head.
Or not so great minds. Not doing us a disservice, but when you put us against Adrian Newey, I think it would take all three of us to try and match his. Right, let's talk about this weekend, because there are still some things up for grabs. It might not be the championship, but it's just as important for some of the teams where they finish this weekend.
It absolutely is. Red Bull have still up the title, so we'll forget them for the moment. But the battle for second is on between Mercedes and Ferrari. There are just 4 points separating them. Mercedes ahead of Ferrari, and you have to say, momentum's probably with Ferrari at the moment, based on the last couple of races. I mean, the numbers before the summer break, Mercedes had around about 50 plus point gap over Ferrari. That's now down to 4, and you just think, what has gone wrong at Mercedes? And well, you can pinpoint it to retirements, disqualifications for the Mercedes drivers, and penalties. You know, Russell should have finished 4th on the road and bagged some good points in Vegas, but of course he had that penalty for his incident with Verstappen. And then you look at Sainz and Leclerc. Leclerc actually with not picking up most points, but when he is 3rd, 2nd, Sainz of course getting the only other win this year outside of a Red Bull. Momentum's surely got to be with Ferrari this weekend.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. This is a track where Ferrari sort of seemed to do fairly well. They certainly were ahead of the Mercedes last year. Carlos Sainz was 4th in qualifying this time last year. Charles Leclerc was 3rd, Hamilton was 5th, and Russell was 6th. So this is a track, and I think even Lewis Hamilton said in sort of the pen before the weekend that, yeah, this is going to be a tough one for us. We're going to give it our all, of course, but it's more suited to Ferrari than it is Mercedes. So, but you know, plenty of things can change in the race, of course, with strategy and potential safety cars.
It's never over till it's over. And if you think it was just the battle of second we're getting excited about, think again, because the battle for 4th is also exciting. That is between McLaren and Aston Martin. 11 points between McLaren, who are ahead of Aston Martin. So that is going to go down to the wire, but McLaren might have the edge, but Aston Martin and Mike Crack, the team principal, saying that they think they finally got a bit of a better understanding about the upgrades that they've been bringing towards the latter stages of the season, so watch out for that battle. And the last one in the teams is the battle for 7th. Now,
told you it was juicy.
It may be 7th, Jenny, but it is worth tens of millions. Williams currently have that 7th spot. They're 7 points ahead of AlphaTauri, who have brought upgrades to the final race of the year to try and overcome that gap. So too have Alfa Romeo, who are 9th. They're just 5 points behind AlphaTauri, and Haas are 4 points behind in 10th. So there's only a handful of points between Williams, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo and Haas, and those are the big battles for the final race of the year.
So 10th place gets about £60 million, and then you go up in $10 million for each place gained. So masses.
I don't get out of bed for 60 million.
Yeah.
We knew about that. Right. Other people who are of interest at the moment, it's Horner versus Hamilton. There's lots going on in the media, picking up on comments that Christian Horner dropped, saying that Lewis Hamilton had been in touch, inquiring for a Red Bull seat. Let's hear what he had to say about it.
I've not approached Christian. I haven't spoken to Christian for years. And no one from my team has, I've checked with everyone. No one from my team has reached out to him. However, he had reached out to me early in the year about meeting up at the end of the season. And I was like, hope you're well, wish you all the best, and congratulations on an amazing season so far, and I hope that I'm able to compete with you in the near future. So
that's Hamilton responding to these rumours. I don't really know what and why Horner wanted to make this statement on the last weekend of the season when they've stormed through everything. Why is it, Alice?
It just makes me chuckle. I'm sitting here listening to it, just having a good old little chuckle to myself. Well, why not? He's just thrown something out. That gives us something else to talk about, doesn't it? I mean, Lewis has obviously, you've just heard his comments there. Horner has recently said that actually it was Anthony Hamilton, so Lewis Hamilton's dad, that approached, but Anthony has not had anything to do with Lewis's career for a good number of years now. And obviously Andrew Benson put as in his article as well that a Red Bull spokesman said it was Anthony. So, we're just one of those, crazy things that we get to debate about. Will Hamilton go to Red Bull? No. I mean, I tell you what though, I would absolutely love it, wouldn't you? Lewis up against Max.
I'd pay good money for that. Good
come on.
money. Never going to happen in a million years. Of course.
I'll add that to my Christmas list, but it's not going to happen. It's one of those that you put down and you go, I'm never going to get that.
they'd need to build a massive wall between those two garages if that was to happen. It's been done in the past, but as you say, the racing would be spectacular. Harmony, not sure it'd be there.
Oh, absolutely not, no. And Red Bull works on the basis of having a clear number one and a backup number two, and that's not changing anytime soon. Why ruffle the feathers of Max Verstappen when he's winning everything for you? And well, your second driver, Perez has been up and down, but he's secured second in the championship, so he's done the bare minimum of what he needed to do. It's such a oh, Dad, why are you talking to Christian Horner? No, why? And there was something about Lewis Hamilton was saying, oh, Christian Horner texted my old number, and then I replied to him, and about having a meet-up, and Hamilton also saying he's spoken to Toto Wolff and Mercedes just to let them know that this has happened, so suddenly there's not all sorts of rumours flying about. But Hamilton's committed to Mercedes for the next couple of years, and he's going to finish his career with Mercedes, that's for sure. Famous last words. But as much as I'd pay for an Alonso Verstappen, a Hamilton Verstappen, never gonna happen.
That's all we've got time for. As always, we'll have live commentary of every session this weekend across the 5 Live network. Plus, you can listen to the Checkered Flag podcast after the race, and you can listen to the full commentary of the race this Sunday from 12:45 on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra. Thanks to Alice and Harry. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.